Let me start by saying this. This video isn't just for you, it's for me too. Because this process of discovering your place in the art world is not linear, and I'm not gonna pretend it is, not even for me. It's been a lot of ups and downs. It's not like you or I choose a role one day and that's it. That role is just ongoing. No, it's evolving. It requires a lot of self-awareness, reflection, and sometimes critique on ourselves and real patience. Today, I want to talk about how to define your role, whether you're an artist, a collector, or honestly, just someone who knows that they are caring and care deeply about art, but still hasn't figured it out, still hasn't figured out what to do with that yet. We're going to talk through the roles that exist, how to begin naming your own role, and why defining that role can bring so much clarity to how you move within this space. I'm not trying to put you in a box, so don't take it as that. Trust me, I'm just offering a little guidance that someone else gave me. This isn't about labeling yourself forever. It's about anchoring yourself for now. So we begin asking ourselves, am I an artist? Am I a collector? Am I a curator, advisor, connector? Let's talk about it. What's up, Glorifiers? For those of you who are new, I'm Mariah Elise, an art advisor and a curator dedicated to making the art world accessible to everyone through insights, conversations, and through discovery. And now also through building a fantasy art collection. How cool. So let's talk about why defining your role actually even matters. When you don't know your role, you start saying yes to everything, every show, every opportunity, every artist recommendation. If you're a collector, you move with way too much excitement, but also from confusion. And confusion, if left unchecked, leads to absolute burnout. And that's something that we absolutely don't want. But when you begin to define your role and understand your identity, your values, your vision, and your voice, you start moving with intention and with clarity, and you've set a direction. After you set your intention, you begin to curate your experiences in the art world, not just react to what's coming your way. Now, I want to be extremely clear here. I'm not saying you have to pick one rigid label and stay there. This is about having a sense of who you are in this season, anchoring yourself in that, and becoming great at that. You're allowed to grow. In fact, you should grow. I encourage you to grow. But here's what I've learned. You can't elevate to the next level if you don't first understand and pass the level that you're on. Sometimes staying put just for a little while, just for a little bit, is the most strategic thing that you could possibly do. Let's talk through some of the roles you might be playing right now. This is a starting point for reflection. And most of us wear multiple hats. I mean, especially if you're in this space. I don't know anyone who doesn't wear multiple hats. But what matters is learning to name them for yourself. Not even for everyone, but for yourself. So you can move with more clarity and less confusion. Now, let's go through all of the roles. First, let's talk about the artist. You're the one producing original work. It doesn't matter if you're painting or sculpting or writing, performing, designing. This is your contribution to the arts. Your work is extremely personal, but it also lives inside this really large ecosystem. Being an artist is really vulnerable and it's not easy. And it doesn't just mean that you're making work. It means building a practice that aligns with your values and your visions. Now, get clear on your why. What's driving you? Is it storytelling? Is it healing, community, experimentation, visibility? Do you want to be rich and famous? Know your why. Know why you're doing it. Also, document your work regularly, not just for Instagram, but for yourself, for your growth, and for your clarity, and most important, for your reflection. Now, also, study the market, but don't be defined by the market. That's tough because when you're studying something, it can get inside. It can steep inside. But you have to be able to study the market, know what's going on in the art world, but don't be intuitively affected by it. When I say study the market, I mean understand how artists like you have moved through the world, through the art world, and sustained their practices. Practice consistency. Your role is creative, but it also is foundational to the entire ecosystem. There is no art world without the art. When artists are clear, everyone else can align more easily around them. Now, let's talk about the collector. The collector is acquiring art, not randomly, but hopefully with a point of view. Maybe you're driven by emotional resonance or cultural responsibility, or maybe you're thinking about your estate and what you're going to pass down to your children or your nieces or your nephews, long-term value building. You may be creating a personal archive. You may be simply supporting artists that you naturally, instinctively believe in. Or you could be investing in voices you feel need to be preserved. Suggestions for collectors exploring this role is to track your acquisitions and track why you acquire the things you acquire. It's to understand your mission, to understand your value, and understand your voice as a collector, to understand why you're collecting what you're collecting. Research the artist. Learn not only from their bio and their CV, but how they think, how they speak about their work. Build relationships with the artists if they're living. Build relationships with the galleries, with other collectors, with advisors. You're not just buying, okay? You're acquiring, you're entering into a conversation. So ask yourself, what story is my collection telling? What is the purpose of my collection? When it's all said and done and I don't collect another piece, when I collect my last piece, when I look back on my entire collection, what was my collection about? Even if you're at the point where you've only collected 2 or 3 pieces, those choices, they matter. So spend time thinking about them. Now let's talk about the curator. The curator shapes narratives. The curator brings stories together, brings thoughts together, and perspectives together. The curator is not afraid to research, search, and accept and receive other perspectives and show them in an organized way or an unorganized way, depending on what their curation goals are. Curators could be working independently or in institutions, or curating simply your home, your feed on Instagram, curating your community events, curating your newsletter. Curators exist in a multitude of forms, but within the art world that typically takes place independently in institutions or in a gallery. Curators are meaning makers. They help us see things in new ways. Suggestions for curators: practice articulation. Now, what I think curators should practice is articulation, something that I try to practice. Why are you bringing these works together? What's the through line? Look beyond the names. Look beyond these huge blue chip artists. Even look beyond established artists. Look into the emerging artists. What conversations are these artists having together? Look at overlooked movements and why they may be important. Overlooked themes and things and political happenings and just happenings and why they may have been important and why we should magnify them. Look into overlooked materials. Look into things that we might be missing. Things that within your practice you find important. And so for a curator, it's also important to understand your vision, your value, your voice, right? The curator is also a creator. Curating is as much about relationships as it is about concepts. You have to be deep in there. You have to be with the artist. And if you can't be with the artist, you have to be a deep student of the artist. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is the educator. As an educator, you make knowledge accessible. You're not just interested in understanding. You want others to understand too. Maybe you teach formally. Maybe you share informally. Maybe you write. Maybe you create content. Maybe you're a mentor. Educators have to focus on clarity, not jargon. That's why I'm not a fan of jargon. You're the bridge. You make the path visible. You need to develop your voice, whether it's through writing, speaking, or digital media. You build consistency in how you communicate. Choose your audience. Who are you speaking to? Are you speaking to artists? Are you speaking to young collectors? Are you speaking to newcomers into the art world? Knowing your people helps shape your language. And then there's also the connector. You thrive in the background, okay? Linking people, resources, ideas. You are extremely important. You introduce the right collector to the right artist. You suggest collaborations. You help secure space. You advocate for someone behind closed doors. Don't underestimate your value. A lot of people dismiss the importance or the value of the connector. And a lot of times the connector is left in the dust, not really receiving the value that everybody else within a project that they help facilitate receives. The entire ecosystem depends on people like you. Create a living archive. Keep notes on who you've met, who they're looking for, what's unfolding, and then set your boundaries, okay? You're generous by nature, but protect that. Protect your energy so you can keep showing up in ways that people really appreciate you showing up. But you have to demand that appreciation results into something else. If you don't, you'll be the connector that connects everybody, that at the end of the day, everyone's grateful for you, but you feel empty. The advisor. Now, before I go into the advisor, I want to say a lot of these roles interact with one another. A lot of them interplay with one another. So understand, even if you're a curator and you're connecting something, understand the role you're playing in that moment, okay? Because we show up in different roles, especially in such an unregulated world, right? As an advisor, I show up as a curator. As a curator, I show up as an advisor. And through this platform, I show up as an educator, but we'll get more into that later. Let's talk about the advisor. You help others navigate. You understand the nuances, the market forces, the institutional politics, creative evolution, and you give and you guide with intention. This could mean a few things: working with artists on career strategy, helping collectors build their collections, or advising institutions on how to shift or how to engage, right? Advisors have to stay grounded in research. Your advice has weight. Keep shaping it. You have to keep shaping it. Keep reading other perspectives and adding to your own. Go out into the world, listen to conversations, be a part of conversations, be a part of heavy research projects so that you can learn. Be transparent, be fair, and intentional in how you work. Stay a student. The best advisors never, ever, ever stop learning, because in order to teach, in order to advise, you have to be a student. Now, where do I find myself? As for me, I've moved through several of these roles, and I balance a lot of these roles at the same time. I started as a creator, believe it or not, and that moved on to curating, storytelling, building experiences. Then I stepped into the role of an educator, actually teaching high school and middle school students art. I still find myself as an educator with this platform, helping people understand this world in a way that doesn't feel intimidating. Now, I'm deeply rooted in being a strategic advisor and a connector within that. And a lot of times that steeps into me dipping my hand into a little bit of curation. I work with artists and collectors who want to move with clarity. I find myself playing the connector a lot, bringing people, bringing resources, and bringing opportunities together. And that is always seems to be a thankless or a payless job. But here's the truth. I didn't wake up and decide on these titles. They're natural for me. They emerged over time through reflection, through mistakes, through watching what kept calling me back. I respond to what's calling me back. I respond to my mission statement. I respond to my statement as an advisor. And if your role still feels fuzzy, that's okay. We just need to get a statement together. We need to know who we are. Fuzzy doesn't mean failure. It means you're in a moment of unfolding. And to be honest, we're always unfolding. And that's sacred space. Now, inside the Glory Collective on Patreon this week, we're really unpacking in a deeper way how to define your role in the art world and how to know when it's time to grow into a new one. This ties into our monthly theme, which is inspired by The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. I'm reading that book right now. I've read it before, but we picked that book for our book club within the Patreon. We're exploring why creativity begins with stillness and how both artists and collectors need to really just slow down and observe and make more intentional decisions. And inside the collective, I'm sharing how I had to even step back with what you guys know to be my fantasy art collection and restructure that collection, restructure my approach to it. There's an exclusive video where I break down my $300,000 fantasy collection budget, creating a pie chart that outlines what percentage goes to different levels of artists, etc. That's in the Patreon right now. We dropped it yesterday, and we also just dropped a video and a worksheet on defining your artist or collector identity. And I'm giving a full framework that you can actually use. And tomorrow we're going to be going over this week in the art world and what's actually happening. So if you want to dig deeper into yourself as an artist or a collector, do things with intention, and also stay abreast of what's going on week to week in the art world, make sure you guys go over and check out the Glory Collective. If this video resonated with you and you want to go deeper, I know you'll love what's happening inside the Glory Collective. And I really recommend starting with the Building Glory tier. You'll get weekly strategy videos, you'll get market tools, and you'll also get live workshops and so much more. And if you want direct one-on-one guidance from me, join the Master and Glory tier. It's for those of you who want to hop on a call each month and go over strategy and develop a plan on how to develop and grow your role as a collector or your career as an artist. Now, let's get practical. I want to talk some exact steps that I walk myself through all the time, because these are things we have to revisit. I walk myself through this, but I also walk my clients through this in helping to identify who we are in this space, in this world. Step 1, define your values. Now, it's time to ask yourself, what do I believe art is even for? What change do I want to be part of through my work or through the work that I acquire? What values am I unwilling to compromise? Please pause the video, go back, rewind those questions, get out your notebook, and answer those questions for yourself. You will be surprised how many aha moments come from that alone. Step 2, reflect on what you naturally do. Look at your past 6 months. What have you been doing that lights you up? What do others come to you for? What decisions have you felt most aligned with? This is where that clarity lives, not in your wish list, but in your lived patterns. What have you done? Use your role to make future decisions. Once you've named yourself, once you understand your role in the art world, use it like a filter. Should you do that show? Should you make that series? Should you acquire that work? Should you take on that client? Does this decision serve my identity as a creator, as a collector, as a connector, or something else? It's not about saying no to everything. It's about saying yes to what actually builds the life, our collection, our practice that you actually want, Look, I know the hard part isn't just naming your role. It's knowing when it's time to evolve. It's knowing how to practice the role that you've named yourself. There's nothing wrong with staying in one role longer than expected. There's nothing wrong with balancing multiple roles. Sometimes we need to master the moment before we move on. Sometimes we need to master how to hold 2 roles at once. That's not stagnation, and that's not confusion. That's strategy. But give yourself grace too. Please give yourself grace too. Growth doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it looks like a shift in how you write your artist statement. Sometimes it's choosing to collect from a region you've never explored before. You don't owe anyone a big announcement when you grow. Just let your actions reflect it. So here's my final question to you. What role do you see yourself playing in the art world right now? And what role are you curious about growing into? Drop it in the comments. I really want to hear if you're in that in-between space where you're searching, where you're refining or evolving this week. And I also want to know who you guys are. Are you artists? Are you collectors? Are you advisors? Who are you guys? What's your role? This week in the Glory Collective, we're spending time with that. There's a guided worksheet, a breakdown of how artists can define their roles and how you can reflect on what your role and your identity might actually be. And again, if you're not ready to join the Patreon yet, if you don't want to be a part of a community per se, make sure you check out my weekly newsletter, which is linked in the description. It's free and it comes out once a week, and it keys in on what I'm learning, what I'm noticing in the art world, and what's also going on in the Glory ecosystem. What's going on the Patreon, what's going on the YouTube. But I also give some kind of general standard advice there. And I also tell you guys what artists I'm paying attention to and what exhibition I'm paying attention to that week, as well as give a market sentiment. So I key in on what I think the market is saying to us with all the news involved. I give a paragraph of a sentiment. So anyway, guys, I want to thank you guys for being here. Whether you're an artist, a collector, or somewhere in between, your role really does matter. We all keep this ecosystem going. It doesn't matter if we consider the work we do small. It's not small. Everything that each one of us are doing, it's important. This work we're doing, naming, refining, growing, it's not small work. It's fundamental and it's foundational to this ecosystem. And I'm walking with you guys on every step. Trust me. And remember, if you're here, this is your home. I hope you view this channel as your home. And I want to thank you guys for watching Dear Glory. And I'll see y'all soon. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this with someone you think may find it value. I'll see you guys inside the next video, or hopefully I'll see you in the collective. Wherever you are, keep walking in glory. Talk soon. Peace.